democracy credible at all? That's the very big question this morning. And we have in the studio one of those playing the game of politics or doing the business of politics in Nigeria. Is actually a member of the APC, which is the ruling party in Lagos and Nigeria, Mr. Tayo Orekoya, politician and political affairs analyst. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Jibola. My pleasure.
And hopefully, Dr. Adeola Yusuf will join us via Zoom much later on the show. So, building strong democratic institutions in Nigeria. Earlier, I highlighted some of the stakeholders, myself, being a media practitioner, politicians like you, political parties like your party, the judiciary, INEC. Looking at our democracy so far, how well do you think some of these institutions are faring to make our democracy stronger than what it is today?
Thank you so very much, Jibola. I think so far, well, so good. We're not where we should be, but we're not where we used to be. In the first place, I mean, we must compliment ourselves as Nigerians for having sustained democracy over the past 26, 27 years, over 2 going to 3 decades now. We've had peaceful election, we've had transition of power, peaceful transition, but I must say that, democratic consistency is what we have had, but it is not the same as consolidating democracy. So democratic consolidation is what I think we're actually talking about when we talk about strengthening our democratic institutions. So it has to do with deepening, strengthening, and institutionalizing democracy. And just like you rightly said, let's look at it. It has to do with the collaboration of the various stakeholders, starting from INEC, which is actually the electoral regulatory body, the umpire. INEC has gone through various phases from the early days in the 1959s when we started, probably we had various, the same institution by various names, from Federal Electoral Commission
to NEC,
to NECON, FEDECO, INEC, and all that. So it's not just about the names. It's about the institutional safeguards that we put in place. For example, INEC needs to have that independence. It needs to have adequate and timely funding, right, to be able to provide that, regulatory function under the Constitution, right? So again, the issue of appointment of electoral officers must be independent, must be unbiased, very fair. People that are apolitical should be serving in that body. And I think to a large extent, we are achieving that gradually. And not just that, going now to the political parties. I think the political parties too have a great role to play in strengthening democracy. You look at the issue of, political parties not just being vehicle for winning elections, but should see themselves as organizations driven by ideology and policy. Our political parties are not policy driven, and I think that has to actually be worked on with every sense of responsibility. Let me say, as of today, it is the All Progressives Congress alone that you can actually see that is putting in place structures that would institutionalize to a reasonable extent, democracy in terms of training, having, a democratic institute, ensuring that leaders are being trained and all that. The processes, are being planned and organized. The programs are being, you have the Renewed Hope agenda, which you can clearly see when you compare with other political parties. Now, the issue is you see opposition criticizing, but what other alternative programs? I'm not sure anybody has been able to say,
oh. But it's not a crime for the opposition parties to criticize.
Yes, but it must be constructive, and then you must offer alternatives. That's the point I'm actually making.
Okay.
Of course, the role of the opposition is to criticize. That's fine. But you have to actually give, I mean, if I ask you now, Jibola, what does ADC have, as alternatives to the current programs? For example, you talk about removal of subsidy. Right. What alternative do we have? You talk about, I mean, the putting together of the exchange rate, having, a convergence.
Unification.
Unification. What alternative do we have? Right. So you have the students' loan that is being put together now under NELFund. What alternative? So,
okay,
talking
Mr.
about
Orekoya,
the political, I'm still coming.
You are beginning to sound like a politician that you
Excuse
are.
me. You see,
projecting your party and some of the reforms of your party.
Strengthening democracy. The legislature has a role to play. Right. The legislature itself must put in place laws that make it possible for the electoral process to be fair, credible, free, so that we can actually pass on this democracy to the next generation. Ditto for the judiciary. The judiciary has a very important role to play. Right. The judiciary must be able to deliver judgments that are fair, that are not based on interference or connections or whatever. At the same time, we must also promote independence of the judiciary. A situation where you have courts of concurrent jurisdiction giving various or varying judgment on the same matter is not healthy to building strong democratic institutions in the country. So, I mean, again, the citizens. You mentioned the media. You have your role to play, which is part of what you're doing here. And we must commend the media in Nigeria. Right, they're bringing everybody to speed as to what we need to do. But of course, we can always do better. Then you have the citizenry. The people have a huge role as well to play in all this.
Absolutely. And then we cannot talk about democracy without the people, which you just mentioned to us now. But looking at Nigeria now, irrespective of political parties, it appears that some of these politicians are not really aware as to the kind of contract or agreement that should exist between them and the people. Looking at the quality of standard of living of the people, you cannot compare it with that of the politicians. And the politicians cannot be in office without the votes of the people. So would you still describe that democracy still being the government of the people, by the people? And I've had Mr. President at different fora say that the governors are getting more money now. But when you look at the grassroots level, when you look at the living standard of the people, it is not equal to what the governors are getting. Okay. So the people are being shortchanged.
Well, I agree to a reasonable extent, but again, I want to say this. We have to look at this. Is it actually, which one came first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Right. In the sense that the people themselves don't actually seem to understand their role in this, and there is need for mass reorientation. The people are actually the employers of the politicians, of the leaders, because, I mean, by the virtue of the Constitution, you understand the purpose of government is for the security and welfare of the people. So the people are actually the employers, right? But unfortunately, the people themselves, I mean, see themselves as being subservient. They look at politicians with a mind of expectation as, oh, you are to do me a favor. No. Government is there to serve the people. And so the people should hold government accountable. The people should not wait for crumbs from the table. And this starts with the election, electing credible leaders in positions of power. Now, a situation whereby, I mean, the people expect, okay, oh, when you get there, you must probably do things to your own area, promoting nepotism or your brother. You have a case, for example, in Osun State. I think one of the issues, the critical issues now, is that people say that, yes, the government is there, but it is actually not being ruled by the person that was elected. You have a situation whereby, oh, you have a sister somewhere, an auntie or a brother who is actually in charge of the state.
We have that in some other states as well.
So I'm just giving an example here. So the people need reorientation. And I would strongly recommend that there is need for mass reorientation across the local governments, the 774 local governments of Nigeria, so that people can actually know their rights. They should hold government accountable. Now, the point you have made is very, very important, which is to say that, look, the government at the subnational level are getting so much more today compared with what they used to get. More than times 3, times 4, right? Yes, some governors are performing, we are seeing some developments, but are we actually getting that same value, with regards to the people? And that's why Mr. President has been saying that governors need to do more. And I do agree. Not just governors. At the local government level, there is need to do much more, because with subsidy removal, there is so much money available to the government now. And so the people who are the authority that actually put governments in place should be the ultimate beneficiaries. And so that is what needs to be done. So the people themselves need reorientation.
Okay, aside from the people now, we cannot talk about politics or democracy without platforms that are there for politicians to actualize their dreams and ambitions, which is where the political parties will come in. In those days, we had political parties with ideologies, clear-cut ideologies that if you mention MPN or UPN, you can actually pinpoint at the policy of that particular political parties. But these days, it's an all-comers affair without any clear-cut path for all these political parties. They will come and promise power. They will come and promise economic prosperity. They will come and promise security and a couple of other elements of a good society. But at the end of the day, you realize that nothing is forthcoming, and you cannot really benchmark their performance with what we have in some other climes. So what should political parties be doing in this direction to put those that are flying their flags on their toes to deliver?
Well, I did mention earlier, and I'm going to reiterate the fact that political parties are not supposed to just be vehicles for winning elections. Political parties should be ideology-driven. Like I mentioned earlier, in those days, when you were in the Unity Party of Nigeria or Action Group, you know that, yes, this is a welfareist party. So, and when you were in MPN, right, you know that, or MPC of those days, this is a capitalist party, right? So it was not very easy. It was more or less like an aberration to move from one party to the other. I remember when former Governor Akeomobori moved from the UPN to MPN, then it was like an aberration. It was a major issue, right, in the country. But that doesn't happen anymore. Today, you see, people changing parties like they change, their addresses. You understand? Today, somebody is in PDP, he goes to ADC tomorrow, he goes to NDC. The whole situation is unthinkable. So I am saying that for us to build strong institutions, political party reforms is imperative. Now, our parties should determine the ideology which they want to actually run on. The ideology, the programs, and not just that. These parties should also train their membership so that, their members know that, look, this is the focus of our party. They imbibe and take ownership of the programs, of the ideology of the party, the policy of the party. And it should actually be varied from that of another or the opposition party, such that people can take a decision. For example, if you look at the Democratic Party in the United States compared with the Republican Party, you know where each of them stands. Yeah. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party in the UK, you know where they stand. So we must draw that line so that people can actually say, but unfortunately, why I think this is also prevalent in Nigeria is because there is so much politics of self, unfortunately.
Self-interest.
Self-interest. And, for me, being in politics is for the purpose of service. But unfortunately, it is not probably seen as such by quite a number of our politicians.
Is politics business?
Politics should
Or an investment portfolio?
It should not be business. Politics should be
it is business in Nigeria.
About service. That's the point I'm making. That it should be about service. For example, a good number of politicians today have what we call second address. I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a consultant, but of course I'm in politics. So you see a situation where when, for example, I was appointed as a director in Lamata, I left my consultancy firm on a Friday, resumed there on Monday, right? And then by the time I was through, I left Lamata 12 years after, and then I was back in my office the following day. That's the way it should be. That is the way. But what you find is politicians become desperate because no second address. You could be a panel beater, a welder, but you're also in politics, right? But you have your business you're doing. You could be an entrepreneur. You could have some other business, but you are participating in politics so that you can be of service to your people. So that, I think, is part of the reorientation that even the political class needs. It is important. Where you find out that people don't have a second address, what happens is they are desperate, it becomes a do-or-die affair, then there are no lines across the parties, everybody is just anywhere, people move from here today, go there tomorrow, and can come back here. We are not building institutions by so doing.
Talking about politics of desperation, politics of killings, Osun State readily comes to mind now, and we have seen what is playing out days before the governorship election of that state. And irrespective of any political parties, Accord will speak and, of course, criticize members of the APC. APC will speak, criticize members of Accord party. How do you think we can actually bring back the sense of decency into our politics, whereby we won't see politics as a do-or-die affair, whereby you go in there and all you think about is how you're going to milk that state or the position where you have been elected to be for your self-enrichment?
I think part of what we need to do is a collaborative institutional responsibility. It starts first from upholding the Constitution, ensuring there is a rule of law in place, protection of the citizens' rights, and holding government accountable. You see, because where government is held accountable, then people in government would know that they need to deliver based on what they have promised, right? And so if that is the case, you find a situation whereby the idea of self-aggrandizement is reduced to the barest minimum. That is one. Two, we need to have checks and balances, in position of power. The legislature needs to be up and doing. I agree that, yes, the legislature, both at the state and federal level, should cooperate with government, right? But at the same time, they must offer constructive criticisms such that they would enable the executive to be able to deliver. And where that is happening, you find out that the people will be the ultimate beneficiaries. And where the people are the ultimate beneficiaries, the people who are in government, who are held accountable, the civil society organizations have a role to play, the people themselves, the citizens, have a role to play in holding government accountable. When all these are in place and we build strong institutions, you find out that there will be less corruption, there will be less personal aggrandizement, and then you will have less of do or die or political violence in the atmosphere.
So how do we build strong institutions? Osun would always come to my mind. Look at what happened recently with the action of the EFCC, even though for Mr. President that stepped in and ordered that the account of Osun State be unfrozen. People read so many meanings to the action of the EFCC. EFCC on its own is an institution that should be impartial towards any political party, but that action few days to the governorship election. People read a lot of meanings into it. Then we have another one. You spoke about the rule of law earlier. The Supreme Court of Nigeria gave a judgment on financial autonomy for local governments in the country as early as 2024. And up until now, some states are yet to oblige or to obey that particular judgment of the Supreme Court, building institutions, like you rightly said. So how do we correct all those anomalies?
Okay, let me start by saying that, you see, building institutions, like I said earlier, has to do with collective responsibility. And in the case where you have, the government.
Mr. Orekoya, I'm sorry you have to hold your thoughts. We need to go on a very short break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation on how we can build strong democratic institutions in Nigeria as we approach the 2027 general elections. We'll be right back.
Strengthening our institutions. I'd like to make reference to the case of local government autonomy, on which the Supreme Court gave a judgment since 2024, and to date has not been, affected, by majority of the state governments. I mean, this is part of what we talk about when we are saying that we allow personalities to be stronger than institutions. When the Supreme Court has given a judgment, that judgment becomes sacrosanct. It must be obeyed. Now, a situation you have is such that the governors, due to their own personal interests, either as a government or whatever, are not looking at the positive effect of this decision. Mr. President has been in support of autonomy for the local government because the local government is the closest to the people, and of course the people can get more benefits when the local government has autonomy. For example, in some states, you find a situation whereby when the jack meeting is held, in fact, some don't even hold what you call jack meeting at all. Once the allocation comes from FAC, the governor just takes it and then give pretense to pay salaries to some of these local government chairmen, right? So that is what some of these governors want to be sustained, right? What they forget is this, that it is not actually in the interest of democracy to have the local government stifled. There is this probably document that goes around, I'm sure a good number of us have seen it, that speaks to the number of governors, the governors that were there in 1979 and all that. And as at today, of all those governors, only 2 are alive. Only 2, I think G.B. Wobodo, and just 1. Right, so these governors have passed on, but the generation continues. So why do we need to personalize government? Why do we need to? Then it means we are not focused on the interest of the country and of the people. So the government needs to actually ensure that the Supreme Court judgment is implemented in this particular instance. And in my opinion, one of the key issues we also have is, because we do not have strong institutions, it has made it impossible for the local governments to have taken these governors back to court for contempt. Because assuming that, there were strong institutions, the local governments could stand, or Algon could stand, a situation whereby probably it's not the governors that got this local government chairman there in the first place, then they're able to stand and then go back to the Supreme Court to file a case of contempt. And of course, there could be sanctions even against those state governments. So where you do not allow this allocation to go to the local government, then probably your own allocation would have to be withheld. These are part of putting in place. This is where we need to ensure that we have the right institutions and we do not personalize, build strong personalities as against strong institutions. So that's one of the ways we can actually promote strengthening our democratic institutions. Now, coming back to the issue you raised about Osun State and the EFCC, I want to say this. The EFCC took an action based on the fact that they were able to see there were some unprecedented withdrawals in a particular account. The Osun State government has about 30 different accounts. It was only one account that probably they have just 5 transactions over a month, but now having like 20 transactions in a day, according to EFCC. I don't think it will be right for EFCC to fold its arms and make sure and see that, oh, okay, this actually goes on without being without them checkmating it.
But why now?
However,
why now?
Why now is because if you allow it to happen, then you now say after the elections, then the horse will have gone off the stable. The money will have been fleeced. Don't forget, I think it was in Edo State or something. The EFCC had to do the same thing. And so when the governor, the election were held, and another governor won, about 16 billion was saved. But again, coming back now to Mr. President, taking that action, Mr. President had to look at it and took the role of a statesman, because this will have been misinterpreted that, oh, it was for political reasons. You see, like we say, 2 wrongs never make a right. But in this case, 2 rights make more rights, is what I will say. The EFCC was right in taking its action, and Mr. President, as a statesman, was right in ensuring that this was not giving political connotation, and of course, both were right in this instance.
All right, Mr. Tayo Orekoya, politician, political affairs analyst. What a fine place to end the conversation this morning on building strong democratic institutions. And earlier, he highlighted so many stakeholders that are involved and what they need to do to strengthen our democracy as we look forward to another round of elections in 2027. We thank you very much for your time this morning.
My great pleasure. Thank you, Jibela.
We'll go on a very quick break. When we come back, it will be the time for the Lagos Conversation right here on the show.